All right, so what we're going to do is we're doing part 2 of our Warhammer 40K reaction videos, and quite honestly, I'm slowly but surely starting to realize the depths, the deep, like the iceberg. You've seen those iceberg videos. I'm like at the tippity top. I'm the first little snowflake that settled on the top of that iceberg. And I apologize for that. I'm a noob, self-confessed noob, but we'll get there. And you guys are there to quarterback the situation. So let's get into it. Bricky's video, part 2. Here we go.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have,
really fast.
Go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty.
All your minds and emotions get projected to the warp. So it's like a Freddy Krueger dream state. So you're having a nightmare and all your worst fears go there. So if you decide that you want to, I'm going to take the bus from this solar system to that next solar system through the warp, you are experiencing all your nightmares, or a demon, encountering a demon that's feeding on those nightmares. Is that right? That's effed up.
It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in chaos and the warp. These are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods.
One guy likes a throne. It's kind of fiery. One guy is sort of ethereal looking, levitating, kind of maybe ice or something like that. One guy's got a cauldron, so poisony. And then we have the super hot, big-breasted gal. So I wonder if these are like 7 deadly sins, but 4, and some of them are combined. I mean, she's going to be lust. She's like sort of succubus-y. The guy in the bottom left with the cauldrons, poison, pestilence, disease. Top left guy kind of looks like a warrior. War. Remember the guy from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Tournament Fighters? War. Might have actually been plagiarized from Warhammer. Let me just get this out there. If there's something quite clearly being plagiarized by another franchise and it was originally from Warhammer, don't shoot me down. And then the other guy, what would he be? No, got lust, gluttony. Boy down the side, he could be it could be a massive cauldron of soup. He could be gluttony as well. I guess we'll find out.
First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term?
Hey, is this who the band Korn were named after? I wonder if they were big Warhammer fans.
Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense,
holy shit, look at this. He's got a tongue coming out of his nutsack. It looks like he's wearing one of those like megalodon jaws as like a freaking scarf or something like that.
Will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while
Eyes on his
also
hands.
completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions, or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horse? Tzeentch is just...
What the is on his shirt? Either he has bad dandruff, or he just dry humped his pillow before he came on this video. Or is it glitter? It's not glitter. He's got like lint all over his shirt.
I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable.
He dried his shirt with a
towel. That's what the God
towel.
of Change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Z.
So these are like, I said 7 deadly sins, but they're like the 4 horsemen, right?
Tzeentch do not like each other very much, because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma, pestilence, and bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay.
He is America, folks. Hey, I'm a citizen. It's like you can't be racist if you are from that race.
And die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot.
Yeah, he's like the hedonistic type god, right?
That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable.
Prince of Pleasure. Gender is very fluid when it comes to the gods, and I heard that about like a lot of succubi and incubi is that they're able to just, I mean, obviously their real form isn't the same as the form that they're presented to those that are trying to tempt. The prince, that's interesting though.
Excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff.
Lust.
Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. So we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done f***ed up, but it or whatever is mainly about just the excess of emotions, and therefore sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture. Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs.
From the tongue, but as well as
Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course, that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything.
So he's jacked, he has breasts, and he probably has a cock and balls and a vagina. He has everything. He's probably got like several of them. Like his hand, you know how that one god had an eye on its hand? He probably has vaginas on his hand.
Mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear, because it is unspeakable excess, the Prince of Pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that of course, one, your mind is put into to the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or say low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos.
So there are civilians. Not everybody's just part of a war faction. What do these civilians do? Do they just like sit and wait, like, well, just see who's maybe going to murder us today? Like, how are there civilians? I noticed that in games like Elden Ring, there wasn't a lot of just people. Like, there's soldiers, there's guys fighting, there's big bosses, but where are the people? Where are the regular people? Can you buy regular people figurines in Warhammer? I don't know.
Cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest,
the god of
trial by
Nebraska.
combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Tzeentch generally don't get along because Tzeentch is that conniving schemer.
He's a lying
but
sack
he's
of shit,
also
that's
about the
why.
idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality. An ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality.
So that Tzeentch guy lives on fear and trepidation, and this guy is just like, here's what you get, this is what's happening, you're gonna die, it's gonna suck, but oh well, there's an end in sight.
That ability that this is over, we are all the same and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh,
I'm not sure Bricky understands anatomy very well. He's done a good job at covering up the nipples. Not sure what the midriff is all about, and he's quite clearly, unless there's a very high penis or something there, he's not really covered anything up. It is a smooth area. It's very Action Man looking down there.
embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical,
Those horns would get in the way.
bam style of pleasure, but also everything else like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right.
Well, I think if they all were just kind of smoothly rounded versions of what they represent, they might not be as marketable to people who buy items and memorabilia and like paraphernalia in the Warhammer franchise. It just wouldn't look as cool, so you wouldn't buy it. So they have to make them that way. I don't really know that there's actually a metaphysical thing, because they say, like, things like gods and angels and all that are formless. Why would somebody who inspires passion and excess need to have a sort of aggressive, intimidating demeanor? They wouldn't. But it sells Warhammer figurines. Maybe I'm wrong
Right now, but
I'm probably
I
wrong.
don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining
Jeez.
all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally
at
very
these,
melee-based.
man.
They run in, go really hard. You have lots.
So, and then somebody in the comments said that these are all hand painted. In the scale of them, they're not just like little army men that you get like 50 in a packet sort of thing from the Dollar Tree. They're not like that sort of size. They're actually decent sized figurines, right?
So summoning and conjuring, tons of spells, generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow, Khorne is super scary in melee, you've got Zeech who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40K and a massive threat to almost every single faction with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines.
The Chaos Space Marines. So these are the other Primarchs that were created by the Emperor, right? So he said in his last video, he created 18, there was a death of one of them, and then 8 other ones went to war, brutally wounded the Emperor. The ones that he created are all now in Chaos Legion? Like the ones that survived the war are now all in Chaos Legion? Or these are the ones that were still in the war, and only one of them died. So these would be the bad ones that attacked the Imperium.
So Horse and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater is it greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids.
Demigods,
that are
like demigods
awesome,
of the underworld.
I'm gonna be honest, they look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down, but you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like, at least on the tabletop, because the Emperor's Children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are...
The way that I'm looking at this is that these Primarchs are the ones that are in the Chaos. They're each loyal to one of the 4 underworld gods, Chaos gods, more than the others. So if there's 8 of them, maybe it's like 2, 2, 2, and 2. Or maybe there's some sort of, maybe there's some dual alliances. Maybe there's a little bit of a two-facedness going on.
Kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve Chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the 4. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good, because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron, still alive, also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron is mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course,
honestly, look at the artwork. It's very intricate and very imaginative. Is that like a little flying pet he's got chained to himself? It's like me taking the dog for a walk that flies. That's unbelievable. Is that? He's got eyeballs on his wings. Mental.
Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell, and they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat.
Yeah,
but overall,
yeah.
with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hard.
It sounds like they're basically like the army of the dead, and like an ever-growing army of the dead. Every time one of these guys gets killed in battle, or gets even so much as corrupted, they end up joining the Chaos Legions. So the Chaos Legions are like an ever-expanding army. Even if they're not killed, they can be recruited if they sin or something like that. Let's say like one of the Space Marines goes up and just like, oh, I like that Sister of Silence chick. Like she's got some very nice curvaceous armor on, and then all of a sudden he's tempted, and now he's been recruited by the army of chaos.
Hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp, and depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending, and while maybe there.
Okay, so wait, so there's no heaven? Like one of the holy sisters, the sisters of, I can't remember the actual name from the last video, the hot blonde looking chicks that were fighting for the church, if they are killed in battle or if they just die or something, surely they don't go to chaos, like surely they go to a different plane, right?
There is at some point some way to stop them somehow. The resources to do so, the requirements to do so are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So I promise we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos. So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slanesh,
my guess is we're going to be elves.
The newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. So back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very...
So the Eldar had an orgy to end all orgies, and through that created this new chaos god.
Very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery.
This is like porn in the 80s and 90s. Like when we were growing up, it would go around the school like, hey, did you hear Doc's got a porno video? Oh my god, oh my god. Hey Doc, can I get a look at that video we've got? I'll give you it back tomorrow. It would be like this thing of legend, like somebody had like a dirty video or a magazine, or somebody found a magazine in the woods or something like that. And now, today, we are the Eldar. We have internet porn at our fingertips, whereas before, like, it was something that, I don't want to say rare, but it was harder to get hold of. Now, it's right here at your fingertips. So then people look at porn, and then they go, something different, different category. We'll go blonde. We'll go Asian. We'll go, whatever. And then down and down and down the rabbit hole they go. It's exactly like that. It's just like increasing levels of debauchery. And no, any addiction's the same. Gambling. Bigger and bigger bets. I can stop whenever I want. And you just get more and more in over your head. But the porn thing's a better analogy, I think. Hey, can I get a loan of your video? I'll give it right back to you.
Started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes,
so that god is probably a manifestation
in such a condensed
of all
space.
the consciousness.
Don't forget, this is all being shot,
of the
all their
depraved
souls as well, into the warp. All this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got f***ed up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So
Keeps
this
doing that
Slaanesh,
with
also
the
known
Cadia
as
thing, I don't
She
get it.
Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this, as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up, because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son, is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny.
That was a lot of reading. These are Warhammer books. Like somebody mentioned in the comments, hundreds and hundreds of books. So is he reading from one of those books? I mean, it looks like pieces of paper, but he's reading from the books, right? Can you buy the books without purchasing figurines and stuff?
And now let's talk about cute
That'd be
plastic
interesting.
models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar, and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population.
Fast cannons.
And their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people, and as they continually, reproduce and
I don't know what he's saying. Like, they seem to be getting better. Is that the lore that's saying that? Like, the new books that are coming out are saying these things? Or there's just more on the shelves in the shops? Like how is he sort of qualifying and quantifying that their population is increasing or seems to be subjectively increasing?
and have their craft worlds expand. Losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race, being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world.
Like Muggles. That's not really derogatory, but mudbloods would be the derogatory statement. Monkai.
Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time,
got
too.
grass on the base of the
We bring only
figurines.
death and leave only carry on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's
Badass
episode
weapon.
of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40K. These are entirely a group.
All right, that's a statement. The Dark Eldar are the most depraved, because we've seen a lot of bad shit so far. We really have. And this is what I was kind of talking about in the last video, is the levels of coolness and badassery just keep going up and keep going up, keep going up. Is this really the most? It's like guys, mostly gals, but guys as well that go, oh, he's my best friend, and he's my best friend. These guys are my best friends. This is my best friend from school. This is my best one. We have one best friend. Best friends, I get it, like my best group of friends or something like that. Like the best team, there's 11 guys on it. Best one. So if he starts to talk about people being more depraved after these guys,
Of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20.
see, this picture was on before and I was thinking about it and I never said anything. But now it's come back again. I'm like, yeah. So these guys are all getting marched to their death. And hot chick here, midriff exposed, like cleavage out. She's just like, yeah, can somebody say something? One of you look at me. Not looking. Definitely having a look at them titties out the corner of his eye. Definitely checking that out of the corner of his eye. I would be like, shit. Get marched to the gas chambers. Oh shit, there's a pair of titties.
20
Humans
a
be
million
humans,
years,
men be
because
men.
that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer.
Don't know who the Necrons
and you
are.
will be destroyed in a millisecond.
Army of Death, probably.
And that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but whatever.
got the
Tyranids,
Orcs yet.
they eat you alive. It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and just pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow
and
back.
ram
so
them up your ass.
They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes.
So the more that I'm gathering about Warhammer is it's not really for kids. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about a franchise like this is the general public, the unenlightened like myself, think it's just action figures, just toys. What's the big deal? But it's so much more. It is so much more than that, and it's very adult, and it's most certainly not for kids.
With grape anywhere and everywhere possible, and this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them, and then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful
pocket
hat,
pussy.
while you are, of course, still alive and breathing. And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
You will be shaped into a butt
and
plug.
that is what happens when you are taken
It's
by the
sat on the
Dark Eldar.
nightstand
They
in
are the
agony
most depraved, most horrifying
until you are
race
nightly
in
rammed
all of
up
40K.
one of their
They look
arses.
apart, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled.
And it does sound like it's just like torture for the sake of torture, but what they're doing is, even though they're like the Dark Eldar, the evil side of the Eldar, what they're doing is almost like work for good, because they're staving her off and actually protecting the real Eldar, maybe unbeknownst to the Dark Eldar, from this Slaanesh god. It's kind of ironic.
So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away, kind of stuff. That's
China
mostly Dark
cannons.
Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And
China the
Sev from
glass,
Republic
not
Commando.
China the country.
A quote from Mr. Vecht. "We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed." Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
Harlequins are not just clowns. Little soapbox moment. I played with a rugby team called the Harlequins. We're most certainly not clowns. Get that right. Anyway.
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craft Worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar.
It's like the entrance to a funhouse or a ghost train.
The Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns. Okay, so imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny, and this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library, and the Harlequins just... They're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy
Insane
for an
clown
Eldar
posse.
to embrace the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment.
Stephen.
Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly
Cool
that
jacket,
make
though.
humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma. They following me.
Who following you?
The bugs.
The bugs.
The Tyranids. Now,
Tyranids.
you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40K game in the beginning, hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y. Those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation
boat there.
of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about
Spit out
absorbing as much biomass as they
thousands
possibly can to evolve
eggs
and
per day.
mutate to be extremely potent and powerful
individual.
and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40K because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence
Bacteria.
in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp.
Tyranids. Bacterianids. They're bacteria. They're big, overgrown claws and fangs. Bacteria. I solved it. There you go.
They have a thing called the Shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp, because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help
So they can
from
close it off.
Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids
more
into
bacteria.
even more advanced monsters. They come in
Yep.
so many varieties too, all
bacteria.
based on what is important.
Taking all
Tiny
the
little
hosts,
ripper
using all the
swarms
hosts'
for
resources to
scouting
create
and having
more
little
bacteria.
dudes eat people up, to the Hormigons,
Bacterianids.
Termagants, and Gene Stealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good
that's
at
King
anti-biological
Staphylococcus right
weaponry.
there.
There is no way you can
Staphylococcus.
plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such.
King
Tyranids
Streptomyces.
are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic
That is
material.
Lord
Keep feeding
Clostridium.
them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you want to know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets, Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets, and they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points. Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through.
Wait, hang on a second. I must have missed that. This is in the Milky Way. This is in our galaxy, not like a galaxy far, far away.
And that is horrifying because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason...
Of course there is. Of course there is, because they talk about Earth. Yeah. So they talk about Earth. So they talk about interstellar travel, but it's still within the Milky Way galaxy. It's not intergalactic travel. All right. Pardon my ignorance there.
The reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. Well, I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little bit more complex, talk gene stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting...
These are viruses. Yeah. So they copy the genetic material of the host into themselves. They spread throughout the hosts and then beyond to other hosts. These are viruses. Last one were bacteria. These are viruses.
Them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers, and these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants to the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle
biggest
school.
Threat. These are the
Asshole.
biggest threat.
There
These
is
are
a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper,
know
leaving
why that's spell
drained,
checker.
dead worlds in its wake.
It's a
This
cancer.
horror, this
Missing a comma.
abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineer monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, they're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
Every screen's gone red.
Come on, the
That
orcs.
means I'm super fast.
Orcs
Seems like there's orcs in every sort of fantasy universe, and they always get a bad name. They're always just like blanket the bad guy. I've got a sneaking suspicion, but there's a little bit more to these guys than just being ogre type bad guys.
Orcs, 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 orcs. I fucking love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40K. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc. Big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me.
I wasn't going to say anything. But it did remind me of just all the football fans on away days. All the English fans going to Germany, following the crowd, and the biggest, loudest guy. We're going here, and then nobody wants to go over there and fight. English fans, for the most part, are actually all right. but then you get one or two wall punchers that are like, oh, we're going here, and everybody else is like tanked up with a drink, like, all right, we'll go. So the orcs are the English football fan base. Got it.
Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs, and then you can't fight because orc dead, and orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs, they scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving...
Because they have faith. They're praying to the god of electricity that's been back on Mars that it's going to work. It's all about faith. Faith in electricity. The Lord's protector, Benjamin Franklin.
In that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you...
Benjamin Franklin. Thomas Edison is what I meant to say. Benjamin Franklin. Sorry. I've just got all these piles of Benjamins laying around me here in my palace that's what made me think of Benjamin Franklin. Thomas Edison, the god of Mars and electricity.
You turn the mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them think they goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Krorks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together that makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this.
It's not a war. Like you just said it, your English accent. We're going to war. We're going to war. Say it, Bushy. What's his name again? Bricky. War.
Giant.
Like Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. Winter is coming. We're going to war.
Tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you
face with a case of beer. Let's fucking go.
So here's the thing.
Let's Warhammer this out.
Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot,
I can already tell you right now, this is video 2, and we're just over halfway through video 2. I think I'd be an orc player. Alright, boys, I've got my fucking pile of orcs, and they're all wearing the England away strip, and we're going to have a great time, and I bought whiskey and beer for everybody. Let's get after it.
And on a 4-up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you f up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose.
So the tabletop is a dice-based game. Again, I didn't know that. I don't know anything about it. Like, is it like Dungeons? Don't You can slay me in the comments here. I'm just asking a legit question. Is it kind of like Dungeons and Dragons to where you have like a book and you roll and it tells you what to do thereafter? You roll a dice, right? So you must have some sort of answers based on what the roll of the dice are.
So you get when you play Orc. That's what happens when you play Orc. It's a coin flip, which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play Orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're gonna have fun, and you want to be stupid, and you want to be silly, you're gonna play some damn Orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons. The Necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, Necron tier. So the Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and just stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they of course knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really, they were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war.
So that is
because
a heaven.
during this War in Heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them.
Old Ones
there was
created the
absolutely no
Eldar
possible chance for them,
and
the
the
Old
Orcs
Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all
except in 10 years' time when Warhammer wants to reboot them, there would be one lone survivor of the Old Ones. The Return of the Jedi. Right? You can see it coming, right? You see it.
all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're gonna eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them, because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Krorks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs.
They are
and then
very
some
sort of
dingus
Egyptian
Mechanicus
type,
guy
right?
diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back and they see all these primitive races on their lawns and they think, get the fuck off of it. So the Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
The Necrons are one of the three.
So I wonder in the tabletop how, like, when a race fights another race and they're killed, an individual is killed, what is it that dictates that they're allowed to get back up? Is it a roll of the dice? Like, oh, I've slain your Necron. All right, roll, and you roll a 3 or whatever, some arbitrary number, and that, oh, what? He's revived. Give him a Phoenix down or something like that. So I'm curious what that is.
Major events in 40K. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War game. Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trays in the Infinite especially, a little
General
dickhead.
Grievous.
But speaking of dickheads, last race, let's talk the Tau.
We made a fucking Wookiee.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40K
like
world,
Tau,
that is, some Imperial
Tau Ceti,
navigation vessels
like,
were going around through different areas, and they
Star
saw
system.
a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. And they thought, nah, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group all species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about
they just
big
don't get it.
Robots.
Everybody,
they
every
have
other race
laser rifles and rail
just
guns. They got
doesn't get it.
giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very
That's what I was thinking.
grim, dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40K universe very well. They lack that
very clean
super
looking,
dark,
very sort of
dramatic,
Transformers-y.
kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own
like
style as well.
Stormtroopers.
The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at range combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting, every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, is anything you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative to you. If you'd like to see more of me, Bricky, you have twitch.tv/Bricky for my streams. You have my merchandise site, in which I was wearing all of my merch, but underneath this, because I had to wear this so it wasn't black.
I cannot get past the lint on that shirt. I do hope somebody comes on and says, no, it's actually glitter. That's like Bricky's like signature glitter shirt. Looks like tile lint to me. But those are some cool hoodies, cool designs.
Black or white for the green screen, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. Also, before I go, let me leave you with my favorite Warhammer quote. He who scoffs at the power of the las gun has never ran through a field of 1,000 of them. Bye-bye.
All right. Yeah, we'll go through some of the comments of the last video and see what sort of feedback you salty vets of the Warhammer world had for me. All right, so let's come back in. We'll look at a couple of comments. I feel like I was a little bit more prepared for what was to come based on how the last video went. The last video was just like, it was like one faction after the other. My head was just spinning. But from this one, I don't know. I feel like that maybe I was just a little bit more prepared for it. And a lot of it made a little bit more sense to me than before, because I had literally no idea what Warhammer was all about. We've got some errors. I don't want to do it on the cell phone. YouTube has shat the bed. All right, let's start with this one. Horus Heresy was basically a mixed bag of bad parenting / father issues. Also, gods didn't put big E, that means Imperium, I'm guessing, as this god of humanity. In fact, Emperor was the biggest atheist that ever existed. He outright banned religion and destroyed all churches that would not comply because it divided humanity. The issue is when one of your sons writes a book and it becomes a bestseller, everyone thinks that that book is true, which, funny enough, Logar was the first one to join Chaos. So the heresy is basically down to bad parenting. There must be like millions and millions of years of just back and forth. I wonder if that lore has been filled out. GZ Young, wow, you went straight in. Bricky does what is Warhammer 40K video and the whole timeline of 40K, which I think would have been easier if you wanted to step into Warhammer lore. I am a big fan of timelines and maps and all that, so that might be one that I'd check. My God, it's Captain Acheran. Is that because I'm baldy and Scottish and got a moustache or something like that? Doesn't he have a beard though? See, I'm not allowed to have a beard because I'm a fireman, and we're not allowed to have facial hair over where the mask of the SCBA would go. I used to have a beard down to about, maybe a little bit lower about here. Dog. Oh yeah, Penny was in it. Yeah, dog. She's I remember. Legit impressed with how quickly you put stuff together, despite coming in blind. Kudos, friend. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do. It's like throwing spaghetti at a wall. You throw that much at it, something's going to stick. I wouldn't say that I'm very astute. I definitely don't know anything about Warhammer, but I'm eager to learn. If that would happen, every human in the galaxy would be slaughtered sooner or later, because logistics are a bitch. I assume that was related to my comment about if the Emperor died, interstellar travel would no longer be a thing. And I think I said, well, if they can't get to different galaxies, then there wouldn't be war. But I think what I was assuming was that the war was happening between the human factions, where it's not just humans against humans, it's humans against demons. So if humans couldn't travel, they couldn't get help from elsewhere. And I think that's what this person was saying. So I responded to it. I was like, so they would just destroy everything in the vicinity. And Lieutenant Rednose was like, no, but because every other species in Chaos would wipe us the fuck out on a galactic scale, a genocide you could not even comprehend. Humanity's war machine keeps turning not because we want to fight and conquer more, but because we must defend ourselves or get annihilated. Yes, dude, awesome video. I was on your live stream. Thank you, Cloud. I appreciate you being there. Thanks so much for the support. This is not just a lot. It's 400 plus books. These are actual books that you can buy. Like, are they in novel form or are they in sort of like Dungeon Master? If you decide this, turn to page 247. Like, what are they like? Hey, one of you guys, please send me a couple of links to Warhammer books, or maybe like some excerpts from Warhammer books. I love to read, and I think that would be cool to learn a little bit more about it. Because again, I'm kind of walking blind here. If the lore is interesting, ... I assume that was me saying I wanted to play the game, and if the lore's interesting, I might play the game. Ariel Wilson, do you have the slightest idea of the magnitude of what you just jumped into? Probably not. Obviously not. Everything here is hand painted. Oh buddy, wait till you see part 2 of this video. It was awesome. It was incredible. My question is like, why are there the first faction, like the soldier guys that have the rifle that's like super powerful, but it's like the weakest weapon in the whole Warhammer universe? What's the point of having boots on the ground? And this Phaedron Main reason for boots on the ground is that life is extremely cheap when you count humanity in quadrillions. Far cheaper and easier to just drown your enemy in people than make tanks, planes, and ships. Well, maybe you should just pray more to the god of Mars. Thomas Edison, not Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, no, that makes sense. If human life is a cheaper currency, just throw it. Don't waste your money on machinery. The doggo is staring into my soul. She's fantastic. Gamer, that your dog needs to be in every video. I'll see what she's doing. It's supposed to be sat immobile on the golden throne for 100 centuries. 10,000 years. Bricky made a mistake. So, because I think I said 100 years. He said 100 years, and I was like, 100 years, that's not long. But 100 centuries, 10,000 years. Great comments. Thank you, guys. It is much appreciated. I will likely go on to part 3 unless you guys think it's good to go back and do the timeline, or if there's any other video suggestions that I should take on before this, please don't hesitate. I want you guys to guide me through this. You guys are the seasoned veterans, and I would like to imagine you were experiencing it for the first time. How would you want somebody to guide you? That's what I want you guys to do for me. Help me to do justice to this franchise that you love so dearly. All right, let's see if we can get the doggy up here. All right, I'm going to mute the mic just a second here. I don't think she's going to come up because I'm upstairs and my wife is gone. She just left for a conference, and we've got 2 elderly cats, and my 65-pound German Shepherd is terrified of the 2 15-year-old cats. I'll see if I can go get her. I don't think she's going to come up. Hang on. Hi. Hi, darling. What's it like? What is that? What is that here? Oh, goodness. She didn't want to come upstairs because she's afraid of the cats. Big yawn. What's that? Yeah. Where we go? Oh, big girl. Hi, big girl. What is it? What is that? Why are your ears back? People are asking for you. Look. They say hi. How you doing? How you doing, pretty girl? You want to get down? You want to get down? You want to go outside? All right, let's go outside and potty. There you go. Good girl. So I appreciate you guys coming in, all the comments and all the direction. It is really an intriguing universe, so I'm excited for the next step. Thanks for coming by. See you next time.